The contents of this program may not necessarily represent the views of Umma Channel.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the second half of Living a Dynamic Life. I am Miriam Louise Curtis and I'm here to let you know all about this wonderful book, Mindful Eating by Rachel Bartholomew and Mandy Pearson. So, just before the break, Mandy, we were discussing mindful eating and your recommendation to the viewers out there on how they can make positive changes very, very simply. So can we just start where we left off, please?
Yeah, so I was just going to, just for a moment, ask you to think about just having a mindful check-in, whatever you're doing right now. And all that means is just to bring your awareness to the moment without judgment. So if you just take a couple of deep breaths in and just check out what's happening, that's right, just what's happening in your body right now. And the idea is that you start to transfer your attention inside, whatever's happening on the outside, and just notice whatever feelings are in your body, whatever physical sensations, whatever emotions are going through. And it's like you can just imagine that there are birds flying outside the window. Even though they're there, you don't need to open the window and let them in, and that would cause chaos. All you need to do is just watch them in a detached way and just acknowledge them and say, yes, I see that you're there. And as you do that and as you slow down and just take a check-in every so often, you begin to notice all the different permutations of your mind and begin to detach from that. And as you do that, you can start to make changes if you choose.
I think that's really important, and thank you for that, because most people are stressed these days. We have very busy lives and it's kind of work, sleep, and many people are in the head, whereas really we need to be balanced. We need to bring it right here, right now. So we need the body, the mind, and the soul is important as well. So when we had a chat before, we mentioned self-awareness. And obviously in the field that you and I work in, self-awareness is absolutely key to, well, to be honest, everything, isn't it? So how would you kind of explain to someone the importance of self-awareness?
I think it's absolutely critical, because without self-awareness, nothing can change. Without self-awareness, we just go through life doing what we've always done, eating the way we've always eaten, doing all the things that we've learnt to grow up with, that we're just programmed to do. And as soon as you bring the light of self-awareness to any activity, it can't but change. It starts the process of change, because just by observing it, things begin to become different. And I think this is something that we've noticed so often on the course, that once you bring the torch of self-awareness, if you like, to one activity, so if that's eating, other things start to change as well, and it becomes generative, because you can't just be mindful about one thing. As you start to develop the habits of mindfulness, they start to generalize throughout your life. And we've seen people make some incredible changes. They might have come to lose a few pounds in the first place, but we've seen them change their lives in really profound ways, change their careers, you know, change their relationships around them with their children in a much better way. People set up their own businesses. And Rachel and I have thought long and hard about why this is, and I think it's just that change just generates more change. And what a wonderful way to start with your eating, because it's something we have to do every day.
Well, we at least three times a day.
Opportunities 3 times a day to change things and be more positive. To remind yourself to just check in at that time, focus, and start to relax around eating. which has got massive physiological benefits too. So.
But it really has, hasn't it? And I just think that what you said then, you know, we start with one change and be it law of attraction, you know, the domino effect, to go back to what you said, Rachel. As we start with one change, it starts affecting absolutely everything else. Because one thing is for sure, if we always do what we always did, we always get what we always got. And until we change, and very often we stay in that blame game, or, you know, the doubt, the guilt, the fear. And I just think that, as you said, you know, we're just running programs. We are very much like little computer boxes, aren't we?
Absolutely.
And we run programs from political, religious, and lots of peer pressure, social pressure, and sometimes that serves us and sometimes it really doesn't. And I think when we eat conscientiously, and when we make that conscious change to be more self-aware, we begin to be aware of, when we come out of the mind into the body, the emotional aspect of a situation, how we feel physically in a situation, how we feel spiritually in a situation. So it really does sound like your work is very, very rewarding.
Oh, incredibly rewarding. You know, I've been so lucky to see so many people make really significant changes in their life, and I liked what you said about the sort of rubbish in, rubbish out metaphor. You know, I think we are like computers, and I think, you know, if we ask really good questions and put some really good stuff in, whether that's nutrition, food, or the questions we ask ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves, then we start to get incredibly good results out. And you know, it's been my life and my privilege to help people change. So.
And long may it continue.
Yes,
it certainly sounds like you're doing good work. So back to you, Rachel. I was talking to a very, very dear friend of mine, Jenny, a few weeks ago, and what she said was that our bowel is responsible for our immune system. And obviously we discussed before, if we kind of eat healthy, we feel healthy. If we eat rubbish, if we eat junk food, then we feel, you know, low vitality and everything else. What would be your kind of advice? What would be your take on this? Because obviously you trained with Patrick Holford, he's creme de la creme, isn't he? He's just an amazing guy. So what's your advice on that? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree completely with what you've just said. I think we're all familiar with the phrase, you are what you eat. And I would go a step further and say, you are what you can digest and then absorb. And really, good health starts with good digestion. And this is really where the mindful eating can be so, so powerful. Because if we start to see digestion as the root of good health, it doesn't matter how good the food is that you're eating, if you're not digesting it properly, it isn't going to do you any good. And digestion doesn't start in here. Digestion starts from the very moment that you start to think about what you're going to eat. So you might start to think about the next meal that's coming. You might smell an aroma that's coming from the kitchen, and immediately your mouth starts to produce enzymes to help you digest that food. Your stomach starts to get ready. It's starting to prepare itself to receive that food and to digest it. If you contrast that with a situation where somebody is running down the street, grabs a sandwich from a shop and eats it on the run without even really thinking about it, perhaps they're messaging their friend at the same time, the body simply isn't prepared and ready to accept that food. And that food's going to go largely undigested. The body may be in a state of stress. And when the body is under stress, digestion isn't the most important thing. The body is getting ready to take action. So your body will divert energy away from the digestive system and send it perhaps towards the muscles, getting ready to take action. So just that simple act of slowing down, taking your time, becoming more mindful about what you're eating, that can have such a profound effect on your overall life. And I do firmly believe that is where good health starts, with good digestion and fostering really healthy habits around the way that you approach food. Yeah.
Because chickpeas are amazing, aren't they, to help with the absorption, or obviously gram flour, which is chickpea flour.
Yeah.
But I think what you've touched on there is very, very important, because if we look at making that change to be more conscientious about eating and taking the time, as we create one change, another change kind of starts to happen, and it's like the domino effect. But one thing that struck me a few years ago, everything is energy, and our emotions are very, very important. And I remember a very, very dear friend of mine saying that they'd gone down to some relatives at Christmas, and she was making, you know, the lovely Christmas lunch and everything else. And what was happening was she was angry. She was really on one. She was quite an angry, feisty lady anyway. So while she was cooking Christmas dinner, everybody was thinking, I'm really hungry and I can smell it and it smells gorgeous. And then when she served it on the table, nobody could eat it because of the anger that had gone in the food. And I'm aware that one of my friends, one of my previous guests, Donna, what she actually does is to put love in her food all the time, and she's very conscientious about how she makes and provides and serves the food. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think food is so much more than a collection of nutrients on a plate. I think food represents so much more. Food can be sociable, food can be something that brings us together. Like you said before, food can bring families together and create an opportunity to chat about the day and check in, you know, that kind of checking in with each other. I think food is really, really powerful. And sometimes it's not about the food. Food is a metaphor for what else is going on around you. So I think my mind has kind of expanded from the very early days of training in nutrition. I think, you know, I'm kind of adding layers on and realising that food is about more than just that. It's not just vitamins and minerals. It plays a much bigger role in our lives. In the book we have a really lovely exercise, which I think is a really lovely starting exercise if people are starting to become more mindful around food. And what we do is ask people to prepare a meal, and before they start that meal, we ask people to look at the ingredients on the plate and consider how they would go about making that meal from scratch. So if they had to do everything involved in putting that meal together from scratch, whether that's growing vegetables, growing fruit, keeping animals, how much time and effort and what would you have to do to create that meal from scratch? And I think it's a really interesting exercise. It helps to connect people to where food really comes from. And it also makes people perhaps think about the I don't have time excuse. Because really we are in a luxurious position of having a lot of food readily available in perhaps a way that, you know, a few hundred years ago we didn't have. So I think that can be a really lovely starting point if people are considering starting to incorporate a bit more mindfulness into the way that they eat. Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because one of the things to me is,
you know, just going somewhere where it's a really good atmosphere. If there's no point going in a restaurant if
the atmosphere is awful,
because it's going to affect the food, isn't it? And I must admit that I just think it's really important to put love, or at least some kind of positive feeling into our food,
and positive feeling into the environment that we're eating. I know for me, because we're in sunny Lancashire, at the moment, you know, when it's a sunny day, I love eating outside. I just love sitting outside in the morning with my breakfast, or sitting outside with lunch, and, you know,
the phones are inside, and, you know, I'm just switched off from the world, and I can just be who I am, you know, be it a
salad or whatever it is that I'm having for lunch. How do you two, kind of, if I start with you, Mandy, what's important to you about how you eat your food?
I think eating with family is absolutely wonderful. Taking a moment, just as Rachel said, to have some gratitude before you eat for where it's come from and everything that's gone in to prepare for that. And I think that's the case in so many cultures, that moment of prayer perhaps before food just gives you that opportunity to slow down and pause as well. I mean, it's a wonderful connection to the divine, but it's also a moment to pause and to really be there and appreciate what you've got. I think it's so important what you said a moment ago about there being love and a quiet atmosphere around eating. There was some wonderful experiments done, wasn't there, around crystals and people focusing on crystalline growth and putting love there, or putting the word love on it and then putting the word hate on another one, and watching the crystal in this jar grow so beautifully and the crystal in this jar kind of wither and die. So absolutely, I think, you know, the attitude with which you eat food and what you bring to food is so important, and, you know, not just for digestion but for your growth as well.
I do agree, and I know when I'm teaching Reiki in various different things, there is a man called Emoto.
That's who I was, Emoto, the crystal
Emoto,
experiment.
and he's done a lot of experiments with water. And obviously, you know, he put the energy of love into one glass of water and the energy of I hate you to the other one. And of course it just won't freeze. Yeah. And equally with things like music, classical music, rather than, forgive me if I offend anybody out there, you know, with hip hop. And I just think it's really important to be aware of what we were bombarding ourselves with, because we don't seem to have any silence left in life anymore.
And it's the messages that come through, isn't it, as well? You know, if you've got the TV on in the background all the time, then you're just passively taking in whatever messages are coming at you, rather than thinking, what atmosphere do I want to create in this moment? We're very big on people taking responsibility for their lives and their environments, and you know, the metaphor that's often used in NLP is driving your own bus, you know, making sure that you're in charge of what happens. And it's a very powerful signal to send to yourself as well, that, you know, I'm going to make this meal exactly how I want it to be, and not be at the mercy of mobile phones or whatever.
Yeah. Wonderful. It's very true though, isn't it? And I think you're obviously making a lot of difference to a lot of people. And when you start seeing changes in people, that they change their career, relationships change, and, you know, people have started their own businesses, you're obviously giving them that self-empowerment, which when we're not self-aware we don't have.
Exactly.
Because we're asleep, we're disconnected, or whatever you want to call it, basically.
But I'm going to return to Rachel here, because obviously training as a nutritionalist, and it's a 3-year course, is that right? 3-4 years?
Yeah, the nutrition course is 3 years. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I did an introductory year as well. So, but yeah, 3 years.
So what would be your advice if anybody wanted to maybe get in touch with you to look at maybe learning about nutrition and healthy eating?
I have my own website, so if anybody, you know, wants to have a look at my website and is interested in getting in touch, then of course, you know, I'm open to that.
And what's the website?
RachelBartholomew.co.uk.
Mm-hmm.
We have a mindful eating website as well, so that's another really great resource, which is lovemindfuleating.co.uk. The British Association of Nutritional Therapists is a great place to start, and the website is bant.org.uk, and that's a great place to start for people who are really interested in finding out more about it and looking at the different courses that there are on offer, because there are a few different routes to training in nutrition, and I think it's important to do the research and find the one that feels right to you. So, but I think talking to people who've, you know, done courses and have that experience is a really good place to start. Yeah.
And I like I said to you before, you know, I thought I was quite aware of food and the value of food and vitamins and minerals.
Yeah.
And I remember when I met Julie Silver years ago, and I just became so much more aware. It really profoundly changed my life. For me, I stopped eating bread a couple of years ago. I do have it very occasionally now. I'm very aware of where I source that bread from. How do you feel about, you know, obviously there's a lot of debate now about organic fruit and veg rather than ordinary fruit and veg. And what I really struggle to comprehend is that if we're in the supermarket, we actually have to look for a label where it says organic.
Yeah.
And that to me is just, it's crazy.
It does seem crazy. It almost feels like it should just be, you know,
everything should be organic.
And you're right, there is a big debate about it. And you can, you know, read strongly for one side and read strongly for another. I have an organic veg box delivered every week from a brilliant company called Riverford Organic, who've been going for years. I love the ethos behind the company. You know, all the literature that comes along with the vegetables, it all makes sense to me, and I have a good feeling about it. I think eating organic is actually really, really important.
Me too, because you can certainly taste the difference.
Yeah.
And especially if it's homegrown.
Yeah.
I remember last year I just put some vegetables out in the compost, and there were
Yeah.
a couple of potatoes that had sprouted.
Yeah.
And they came up.
Yeah.
And I must admit, just the satisfaction of digging them up. And I'm so lucky because I've got a pear tree at home, an apple tree
Yeah.
and a plum tree.
Yeah.
And my gorgeous son-in-law, not that I'm biased or anything,
Yeah.
he's absolutely amazing because he pruned them.
Yeah.
And last year, honestly, you know, talk about abundance with all three of them. I was just giving them away, but it's kind of sharing the love, really, isn't it,
Yeah.
and the appreciation. And
Yeah.
I always remember, because obviously my house is full of very positive energy, and that extends to the garden. And one of the girls, I gave her a dish of plums. And she came back to me the week after and she said, Mary, I don't know what you'd put in your plums, but she won first prize in a competition for a plum pie. So I really took that, you know, to heart, and I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm aware a lot of people are advocating kind of growing your own foods in
Yeah.
allotments these days.
Yeah.
And obviously we have the awareness of growing your own herbs and things like
Yeah.
that. And it's not difficult.
No.
You know, I'm no gardener and my garden at home is beautiful.
Yeah.
And yes, I honestly can say that my mum and dad have helped me, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be, you know, here today without that help.
Yeah.
But I think just sometimes just taking the courage, and just to come back to you, Mandy, we've got a few minutes left here. You said, you know, you just make that change, we get self-aware, we get the confidence. And sometimes I always think that, again, to go back to law of attraction, you start one change, you get the courage in one thing to change that. And you just think, you know what, I may not have been a gardener before, but I'm going to give it a whirl. And to be honest, from everything that the two of you have said, and obviously from our chats before, everything about mindful eating makes sense. It's not rocket science.
No.
And you obviously are changing people's lives out there very rapidly from the sound of it. So just to make the viewers out there aware, you're available to do workshops and talks, aren't you, if people want to get in touch. So we've mentioned the website, and obviously we've mentioned the book. You mentioned before that there's going to be an app coming out soon.
Yes, we're looking to bring an app out next year, so in 2015. And this is hopefully going to have lots of reminders to be mindful on it. So lots of, if people like the technological approach, it'll remind you to drink some water, it'll remind you to take a moment to check in with yourself, and some really solid nutritional advice along with some meditations as well. And also next year we're looking to have the retreat as well. And I think that ties in with what I was saying before. It's just to give people the whole experience, to, you know, have beautiful food that's cooked with love in a beautiful space, and to just completely immerse ourselves in mindfulness with eating for a few days. So it's going to be a real treat to be able to do that for people as well.
So where are you thinking of holding the retreat?
It's going to be at a place called Plas Cadnant, which is in Anglesey, which anybody can Google. It's absolutely beautiful.
So that's in North Wales,
Yeah,
obviously.
North Wales,
Yes,
Anglesey. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. You mentioned there about water. We're just obviously in the final kind of probably 90 seconds now. I notice as a therapist, and certainly for myself when I don't drink water, filtered water by the way, I just feel so tired. And by drinking water, you know, we talk about being hydrated, we need water for every single process in the body, respiration, metabolism and excretion and everything else. How much water should we be drinking?
Well, we recommend that you just have a glass of water next to you all the time and just keep sipping. So it's not really a prescriptive. People say 8 glasses a day, but it's not really prescriptive. We keep a water bottle with us at all times and just have a sip whenever. And it's just to kind of remind yourself to do that, because whatever's available, you will have. So,
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for coming along today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to reread this. I'm going to keep recommending it, because to me it is just the creme de la creme. Dale Pinnock is a very good writer. The Medicinal Chef and Medicinal Cookery are fantastic books. I have to say this incorporates everything. So I will continue to recommend
thank
this.
you.
So kind,
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So I may invite you back on the show. We'll see what comments we get from the viewers, and hopefully they've enjoyed it. So
thank you for watching Living a Dynamic Life. I'm Miriam Louise Curtis. I hope you've enjoyed it. The email, if you do want any more advice, is dynamicliving@umorchannel.tv. And I hope that you will join us next week for Living a Dynamic Life. But thank you, ladies, for today. Rachel Bartholomew, Mandy Pearson, and this wonderful book, Mindful Eating. Thank you.